Please put your hands together to welcome our next keynote speaker, who is the best-selling author and CEO and founder of the Personal Branding Consultants, LLC, Faith James. She is also called the Queen of Branding. Please welcome Faith.
One, two. Mic check, 1, 2. Yeah? Wonderful. All right. So I'm not going to stand behind this podium, and in fact, I'm going to ask everybody to sit right up. Sit up, sit close. We're going to be talking about food as friend, right? We are at I'm looking for my clicker as I move about the stage. Is this it? Yeah. Food as friend. So when we think about food, and we're at the global conference on all things food, who can give me their definition of what food is? What is food? Anybody? Throw it out. Food. Energy. Like that. Who else? Sustenance. Good. Am I clicking this the right way? How do I click this? Is this it? Support. The green. There we go. Thank you. So when we summon Wikipedia, right? Shout out to the team at Wikipedia. Their definition of food is any substance consumed to provide nutritional support for an organism. When was the last time you walked into a restaurant and said, yes, I'm looking for some support, some nutritional support for this organism? Nobody, just me? Okay. Food, you get it. It's more than fuel. And if you ask Dr. John Berardi, PhD, he says, as a trained physiologist and biochemist, he often looks at food through the science lens, right? So the answers that you've given before, fuel, sustenance, right? All those come through the science lens. But that's not the only perspective, and it can't be, because as he coaches his clients, it's essential to recognize, he says, that sharing food is a fundamental human act. Breaking bread, or whatever you have on the table, is part of culture, it's part of history, and my invitation for you today is to get ready to look at food through a different lens. So one of the things that I do as a brand strategist, as a business coach, as a former marketing, research, branding strategist, we always go to the voice of the consumer. What is the consumer saying about your particular product and or brand? And so we consult who? The Google. And I want you to take note of the numbers. The phrase, food is fuel, had the fewest number of returned results. Look at food as my family, 5.6 billion. Food is my life, 4.7 billion. Food is friend, 2.4. Food is my love language, 1.8. So leaders of the food industry, if you didn't know before, today, now you know that your consumers, the people for whom you're doing all of this wonderful work, they see food through the relationship lens. And the invitation is that you too also join them in that understanding. So when we think about food, we get to think about food as art. Who took a picture of their food while they were at the conference today? Yeah, don't be shy. There you go. I see you. Right here. Right? We see each other. Food is art. Food is passion. So the people for whom the curation of amazing delicacies and food, that's their passion. So that's how they demonstrate that individualism. Testing, okay. Food is romance. When you think about your lover, shout out to my honey who's in front here, Team Faith, he's always where I go. Love you, babes. We first got together at a restaurant over food, right? It wasn't about, oh, I'm hungry. It's, oh, do we want to date each other? But food was the place we went to. Food is family. Connecting moments, connecting with your children, connecting with your loved ones happens over food. evidence, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Easter, etc. And food is play. Who here has children? Ever had a toddler where you're like, yep, just let him have the spaghetti, let him go, I see you. And food is play. And food is unconditional love. Food is a lot of things, and the Bible, as example, demonstrated this so clearly. From the Last Supper, to the feast for the prodigal son, to Jesus feeding the 5,000, to getting manna in the desert, Abraham's sacrificial ram, and who doesn't want to go to the land of milk and honey, where all things come up wonderful. So food is more than fuel. We understand that. We've established that. And my invitation to you is to also come into conscious awareness. Food is not just for the chosen few, not just for the fabulous few. Food is for the least of these. So it's time for us to take a new view. If you haven't looked at food this way, let me invite you into this relationship lens. I want to be talking and presencing us today as leaders in the food industry to food insecurity. Globally, 265 million across the globe acute food insecurity. That means no idea where the next meal is coming from. That means going to bed hungry night after night, waking up hungry morning after morning. When we look globally, because we're at an international conference and we're talking about food across the world, it's very important that I want to presence us to the regions that have food insecurity. South Sudan, 61%, whole 61% of the population today, right now. Did we enjoy our fabulous lunch just now? I mean, it was for the gods, a meal, it was so delicious. 61% of the people in South Sudan, food insecurity. Yemen, Central African Republic, Zimbabwe, Afghanistan, South Sudan, Haiti, 35%. Think about that. I'm here to say that that is not okay. I am asking you if you care to join and recognize that that is not okay. So when we think about the relationship lens, this is how the people in that lens are defined. They together decide, based on actions, which actions are ethical, and clearly think about through their responsibilities. Who's responsible? Who's responsible? Who's responsible? Who's responsible for eradicating food insecurity? The answer is we are all responsible. Level 4 leadership asks you to say, I am responsible. Not I'm taking responsibility, I am responsible, because we are connected one to the whole. We're not set apart from the people in the Sudan. We're not set apart from the people in Haiti. We are all one. And so if 61% are hungry, it is our responsibility. So it's not them, it's us leaders in the food industry. It's not they, it's we, leaders in the food industry. It's not someone else, it's me, leader in the food industry. When you take a look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, who's seen this chart before? Raise your hand. Everybody, lots of people, many of you. Do you see where food sits? It's a basic human need. It is not way at the top of self-actualization. I want to find out who I am and my place in this world and the meaning of life. Food is a physiological need. Humans can serve 3 weeks, maybe, without food? It's a basic need. So we're not asking you to do anything that's just sort of so out of left field. When you think about the justification for action, so we sit here and you're like, okay, so faith is inviting me to take action. What would be my justification for action? The lens says, I wanted to make sure everyone was treated the same. If you believe in equity, in fairness, in justice, this will be a statement you get to affirm. I want to make sure everyone was treated the same. What is the definition of an ethical act within the relationship lens? It contributes to each member of the community knowing that they are a part of all that is. I said we are one. We may manifest differently. I stand here in front of you as a Jamaican Black woman. My husband's Italian, German, whatever else, white male, right? Everybody else manifests differently, but hear me from my heart. We are all one. We're all one the same. One the same. Our national motto in Jamaica is out of many, one people. So that's what I grew up on. That was my understanding, my belief. You look different from me, but you're just like me. You may move different from me, but you're just like me. Our humanity is oneness. What is the foundational question we get to ask ourselves? We wake up in the morning, we eat our food, or Jewish food that we'll be eating every morning. What is equal? What is equitable? What is equal? What is equitable? Is it equitable to understand, to believe that everyone, every human, gets the right to a warm breakfast, whatever that might be? Nobody's saying it needs to be 4 egg white omelets with spinach, right? But sustenance, nutrition, what did somebody else say in the back there, right? They get to have that if we think that's equal and equitable. What are the gifts present in the people who live in, work in the relationship lens? They act from concern for the least advantaged. So as we sit here in this fabulous Zhuge ballroom, I mean, look, the chandeliers for the gods, we get to also remember, think about, care about the least of these. So your key phrase, if you are taking the invitation to stand in the relationship lens, is I am fair. I am fair. I am fair. And this is your stakeholder. This is your key stakeholder for all the things that you do. Food manufacturers, you're coming up with new vegan products. You're coming up with new wine flavors. Whatever it is that you're doing in food, who's the key stakeholder? At the end of the day, those with the lowest power or voice in the process. So, my question to you all. What's your company's plans or initiatives to eradicate food insecurity across the world? Who here has a stated mission, vision, plan that your company has on your website? I went to every single person's social, every single person's website. I could be wrong. This has happened before. I could be wrong. I saw only 2 with an overt, stated mission that either mentioned the word world or global. Some reasons, some stories, some excuses for us to consider. It's not possible. Ending hunger across the world, way too big, too audacious, too unreasonable, too hard, and it is not my job to save the world. I get to take care of my family. The world can figure it out on their own. And I tell you, it's intention over mechanism. You just have to say, yes, it is my intention that every child in Haiti, in Sudan, in Africa, in Afghanistan gets to wake up and have a meal. You only need to say that that is your intention. The mechanism will sort itself out. How do we get there? Let's look at the moon landing. When President Kennedy decided was his intention for the US to have a manned mission to the moon. He went to the NASA scientists, lead scientist, and said, what is it going to take? What is it going to take for us to get a man on the moon? Who can tell me what the NASA scientists said? Come close, because this will land for you. The NASA scientists said to President Kennedy, the will to do it. He didn't say we need this many number of plutonium barbs or fuselage or trillions of dollars, nothing. The will to do it. So, is it your will to eradicate food insecurity? Is it your will? I'm not asking you how you plan on doing it, if you've ever thought it, but is it your will? Is it your intention that on this planet, food, how do I go back? Food insecurity is eradicated. So I want to share this with you. So my mission, my agency, the Personal Branding Consultancy, we're an international agency. We build brands all across the galaxy. And you might think, galaxy, ma'am? Like the Milky Way galaxy? Yes, because shout out to the Mars team, we're going to be building brands on Mars. So my vision, my mission is big, and that's not even big enough. So when I ask you, do you have the will? Let me invite you to the recognition, the understanding that God says He calls you to enlarge the place of your territory. So you might be making tiny donuts in Philly, and you get to think about the people in the Sudan. And you might be making amazing new flavors of wine in Sonoma, and you get to think about the children in Haiti. Enlarge the place of your territory. It's not an either or. My invitation to you is to think it's a both and, right? It's not, oh, I build my business here in Philly, or I worry about feeding the world. It's a both and. You get to do both. And here are some very simple, very quick. This is not the exhaustive list. Obviously, building out a mission like this is something that'll take great consideration and care. But let me just take you through. Number one, a C-level role. That this role is assigned to a person in your company who sits on the board, who sits in the C-level suite meetings, who talks about, yeah, we made this much money, we made this much profit, and this is what we did to eradicate food insecurity. That you have a brand and a vision and a mission statement that clearly articulates that, so there's no confusion, right? I showed you mine. We're building brands across the galaxy. So nobody can say, oh, do you think she just works in Florida? No, she does branding across the galaxy. Your employee handbook and your culture, so that every person who comes into contact with your organization understands at the end of the day, this is what it's for. Simon Sinek says, nobody cares what you do until they know why you do it. We're in this company, this industry, because as purveyors of X, Y, and Z, we get to participate in the eradication of food insecurity. Bake it into your business model, so it's not an afterthought. People aren't confused. Evidence, Tom's shoes. You guys know this. Buy a shoe goes to a country in need to serve underserved people. Your public relations strategy should be known. You should be getting invitations from media. Again, you're leaders in the food industry. Are the media calling you to have commentary and discussion when they're covering stories of conflict in Sudan? If that's not happening, I need you to wake up to that. That should be happening, because your voice should be so known in the industry that they go, oh, let's go talk to so-and-so. They're always talking about conflict, and one of the reasons people have food insecurity is because of global conflict. Obviously, on your website, your marketing, I told you I went to everybody's website, only saw 2. Your social media strategy, your content that you're putting out, you should be looking for on the nationaldaycalendar.com. If you're not using that, use that, where it tells you the different things that are happening across the days, internationally, weeks. Create content that mirror matches what's going on in the world, so you increase your relevance, you increase your top of mind when it comes to your mission and your vision. And lastly, and certainly very important, your client communications. Do your customers know that you have this mission, this vision? Do they understand? Can they repeat back? Oh, I'm doing business with this company because of their stance on eradicating food insecurity. You would be surprised to know how much goodwill you could foster, generate, just by your philanthropic stand and by letting the people in your sphere know that this is what you stand for. I want to invite you to connect with me on my social media platforms. This is such an important topic. When I think about your your mission and your brand? How do you stand out? How do you get media calling you? It's because of what your brand essence is all about. And if as a leader in food, you do not have food insecurity, eradication of food insecurity of part of what it is that you're doing, so it's people over profits, that you're known as a person who cares and gives, then I want to invite you to connect with me. And I'm here if you have any questions about how this gets done, any questions about what this might look like for you. And I thank you in advance for your interest, your great playing along. I thank you so much. Any questions? Yes. Oh, he's bringing the microphone.
Thank you. Actually, I'm from the next conference.
Yeah.
But, just dropping in. I used to actually work on a food tech to be able to address the issues of food waste in America. And one thing I've discovered, I've worked in a couple of different countries in the States and also in East Asia and Southeast Asia. I'm so sorry. What I discovered, though, is that there's always an issue with addressing a social problem in each different country because they have a different context. And how I see us addressing a problem is really through localization and really understanding the local issue at hand, right? For example, as you mentioned, trying to give a pair of shoes to people in Africa, or trying to give food to Africa. It's more like when we say teach a man to fish, and
Absolutely.
you will eat for a lifetime. So giving a pair of shoes is not really teaching a man to fish, right? However, I would say, being able to solve social issues can be better addressed when we really understand the local issue at hand, which means addressing problems in America itself. I would rather say, instead of trying to look at the other side of the world, trying to address problems like homelessness and food wastage here in America would be a more realistic approach, and something that can be directly addressed and actually resolved when we really understand this topic. What are your thoughts behind that?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yes, and, right? This is how I run my meetings. Yes, and. There are no buts, there are no bad ideas, absolutely. You want to get started there? Get started. Part of what happens is there's this inertia because it feels so massive. It's like, oh my gosh, do we start in the US or do we start in South Sudan? Do we start here? Start. How do you run a 20,000-mile march? You run a 20,000-mile march one step at a time. And so just the intention, this is the most important thing. If you remember nothing of what I say here today, it's intention over mechanism. It is our intention that we eradicate food insecurity across the globe. That is the big, audacious, unreasonable, irrational goal. And it's not even big enough. It's not unreasonable enough. But we start there. And that is the intention, and it's 100% intention. The mechanism sort itself out. But thank you for presencing us to that, absolutely. Who else had a question?
Yes, with what happened in 2020, and we're still obviously going through this, have you had setbacks or there been new challenges that have come up that I know concern me, like the crops are dying in the field, we can't get things to market, and I know in Vegas, this is where I live, the food banks were taxed out, children whose only meal was at school, and now they didn't have it. All these type of things were going on that we never experienced before, so I'm just curious, how do we get back on track, or has it thrown us off track from moving forward to be able to help people on a global scale?
Absolutely, and yes, did we get challenged? Did the food banks get taxed? I mean, we saw the news. People lined up 4 or 5 hours in their car just trying to get a turkey and a side for Thanksgiving. That is not okay. And so the biggest thing that we can do, again, I presence us as leaders in the food industry, is to bring people into consciousness to this idea that it is not okay for people to not have food on this planet. Period, done, end of story. Mechanisms be damned. It is not okay for people anywhere in the world to be hungry. And where shall you start? Where do you want to start? It's yes and. Yes, and let's get a handle on food wastage in the US. And do you have a contact in the South Sudan that we can talk about? How are they sourcing food right now? It all gets to be possible if we stand in our 100% intention. And when you think about it, sort of like, oh, it feels irrational, absolutely, and go bigger. Because I will think about Steve Jobs when he designed the experience of Apple, abhorred research, wanted nothing to do with market research. Apple is a design company that happens to make computing technology. If you look at all of the pieces, there's such a beautiful design essence to feel about it, and he was in his intention that that was what's going to happen. Nike, the swoosh. Who knows what a swoosh is? What is a swoosh? Anybody ever seen a swoosh? Before Nike said, here is a swoosh, and here's what it means, all intention. We can do the same thing when it comes to food and food eradication. We just get to start where we are. Bloom where you're planted. God says never despise small beginnings. If it's just in your community, you do it. And you talk to one person about, did you know, I went to this conference this weekend, and did you know that 35% of the people in Haiti are in food insecurity? Wow. Just presencing them to that fact that people, children who are not in school, are hungry. Like, who knows what that feeling even feels like? I don't. Have you ever gone days starving, hungry, in pain, stomach cramps because you can't get food? So until you bring people into that awareness of it and say, this is not okay, and that I stand for this, that it is not okay, what can we do, what should we do? So I love that question. And we get to start right where we are. 100% be in your intention. The eradication, the how will come. Martin Luther King says, just keep climbing the stairs. The staircase will be made manifest. You won't see it, but just keep stepping. Keep on stepping, GSAF. I love you guys so much. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.